Hello, just wanted to really create a quick guide about becoming a tournament organiser. There's a lot of content around being your first player at a tournament, but not so much on if you want to create tournaments. A lot of resources are there, it's finding them. So first of all, TO is the person that puts the event together, tournament organiser. The difference between a judge and a TO is judge is someone that is there just as a rules kind of help to keep games running smooth. They kind of are interchangeable. A TO can be a judge, but a judge isn't always a TO. I use judge a lot in packs just for future proofing, in case I forget to change it later on should the events require more judges, basically. Unless you are running a large scale event over sort of 40 to 60 players, the necessity of having a secondary judge is possibly less likely. Again, depends on your community, local area, all that sort of thing. So I started out running tournaments 4 years ago now, I think, so not been forever. I started because of the fact that there weren't many around when I first played. You could probably go to an event every other month unless you wanted to travel upwards of 2 or more hours, whereas now there's an event even in Kent almost every weekend all the way across the year except maybe at Christmas. So there is a lot more Warhammer events going on. I only run 40k events, so a lot of this will apply to other systems, but I will be using kind of specific things from 40k because that is what I know. So main thing you need, first of all, you need a venue. You need somewhere to run the events. Again, it depends on how much you're going to scale them up as to how big this place is. A good place to start is village halls, community centres, schools as well. You do need to then factor in cost. Some of the school halls can be upwards of £40 to £60 an hour to hire. The next thing to factor is when and for how long can you have the space. Some schools only do Saturdays up until like 6 o'clock. Other places allow you to lock up yourself. So it's very much worth looking at what it is you're going to be running, for how long and where. Once you've kind of got that idea, it's looking also at mats and terrain. They're kind of the other core components you will need. Aside from tables, you will need 6 foot by 2 foot minimum kind of size tables. Your standard kind of folding table that you can get is the right side, a 6 foot trestle table effectively. You need 2 of them to be wide enough. You need to know where you're going to store it, or if the venue you're using actually has access to this kind of size table, because that is a huge consideration for transport, travel and location if you are having to supply your own tables and bring them to the venue. A lot of community centres and things like that will have tables of some variety. Whether they are fit for purpose is another matter, because they'll run things like weddings and whatnot, so they tend to have that kind of stock. Chairs is also another useful one, because standing up for 12 hours for the player is a long time. You then kind of need to look at what your community wants, what's popular in the area, or if you want to do something different. Although I do have some silly number of Games Workshop layout tables, my events are predominantly WTC format, because it is something that isn't offered in Kent by other tournament organisers, so trying to be a bit different, provide something different for the community. So that is the kind of, after previously creating and maintaining and driving myself insane with a kind of bespoke terrain format, I pivoted to something that is established and curated by someone else, because it makes your life a lot easier. Means that it's not another thing to have to think about all the time. Mats, you need to make sure that you buy ones that are going to last. If you try and go too cheap, they might not last, they might fall apart, and then you're just paying twice for the same product. You're probably looking on average about £50 a mat. So that is, for 20 players, you're looking at £500 just for the mats. Obviously, the larger the events go, the more the cost scales up. Massive consideration is the initial investment. There is a big cost. Your first event technically will be a loss, because you'll have had to cover the costs of the terrain and everything else, and then going forward, depending on how much you are having to transport, whether you're having to hire a van because you haven't got a car that is suitable for transporting things, or you can't organise multiple people to help bring terrain, mats, tables, whatever. You will have to factor that in, which will obviously be impact upon any profit. So there is not a huge financial gain within events on the whole. It's kind of more providing a opportunity for the community, I tend to find personally, and it depends on what you're looking to do. Again, if you charge really high prices, yes, technically you'll make more money, but it depends on whether people sign up. So again, you need to look at the area. What are other people providing? If there are lots of tournament organisers in the area, if everyone else provides a free roast dinner and a pint, and you're charging the same price and you don't, then where are you going to get the same kind of attendance rate? What makes you unique? Are you focused on providing a really good competitive experience? Are you more focused on casual play? Are you somewhere in between? What is your niche as well? Because that is your advertising strength of how you are going to market yourself to others. You then also need to come up with a name, potentially, because that will help with marketing the events, talking about the events, and kind of it becoming a brand. You can go to things like Fiverr, things like that, get someone to design a logo or create your own logo, just to kind of, again, help with making it so that you are accessible and kind of visible to people. So they're kind of a few things you kind of need to look at before you start. You then need to consider as well the terrain format you're going to choose. And so, for example, the main three ones really in the UK are WTC, GW and UKTC. There are a couple of other permutations, but these are predominantly the ones now that exist really. So mine are WTC. I do sell terrain, so again, if you are looking for it, you can obviously kind of come and have a look here. I do discounts for bulk purchases. Again, always shop around, always have a look and find out what options there are if you are looking to buy multiple sets, because it's worth kind of seeing what you can do to keep costs down. Once you've chosen your terrain format, and again, there is no right answer, it's, preference partly. There are advantages and disadvantages to each one, as with anything, and always people will have their own opinion. The other thing you need to kind of start to think about is the event pack. Mine are all on my website, so you can obviously come and have a look and cherry pick, use as much as you feel you need to. Whether it's useful or relevant is kind of up for you to decide. So this is my one for my February event. So I have it structured the same way each time because it is then consistent. You also have to get used to the fact that players don't actually read them half the time, but it's always useful to have it there to be able to refer it back to them, because once they've been to a couple of your events, they kind of expect familiarity. So if you keep changing things every single event, it might lead to confusion. So I always do the date, the end time, the venue. You then have the missions, what prizes that you kind of offer in terms of first to third place. It's worth reaching out to local companies that might do sponsorship. I have Chaos Cards and Element Games are very kind in sponsoring events for kind of prize support. There are lots of other things. I know I have had Orange Brushes before sponsor an event, Colourforge, so there are lots of options. It's a case of reaching out. Or are you kind of providing something alternative? Do you have a local game store that might be able to help you and support and the events? So it's worth finding that out. Or are you kind of going to supply prizes yourself? Is always a choice. Making sure you kind of include when rules cut-off will be, because that is quite important, because then players know what list to submit, and making sure things are legal, when they're due by, and kind of paint standard. I have is my first page. How to register, so people know how they're going to go on there. Either A, are they going to be automatically registered on BCP because you're doing payments through BCP, or will you as the TO add them? I also do break down how the rounds progress, because again, it just is helpful for players to know, and also communicating that information in advance means it's not a surprise should you have to have that conversation around how long is left. Clocks are contentious for some. I think they're really useful when used appropriately. So again, it's a decision. Are you going to include them? If not, how are you going to make sure that games are kept to time? Players feel that they are getting a fair amount of time. So just another thing to kind of consider. Explaining kind of actually making sure that people are ready when they call a judge with the correct rule, because again, if you're having to spend 10 minutes at a table from a judge point of view, are you able to give kind of full support to everyone in the room? As well as if it's taking you 20 minutes to resolve a rule, that is far too long, and if they have the material ready, it makes things quicker for everybody. Again, it's just making sure that people are aware of the fact that rulings are made. Having a good understanding of the rules is important. Making sure you keep a kind of up to date on changes and stuff like that in a broad sense is useful, because that can help a lot with anything specific that's new and kind of in vogue, as it were. Other thing is kind of what are your expectations for painting, for what people need to bring, and how people are going to kind of have their rules available. And again, it's just setting expectations out, and that's part of what the event pack does. I then have the information around the WTC terrain, as well as the direct link, because it is what I use. And then I like to include the why Warhammer tournaments exist from Games Workshop, just as a reminder that actually we are there to have fun at the end of the day, because I don't understand why anyone is kind of playing the game otherwise. And for some people, fun is playing a competitive event. For some people, it's having that chat and kind of meeting new people. So people's point of view on fun might be differ, but again, as long as it doesn't negatively impact anyone else's experience. And yeah, that's kind of the event pack there. So it's just kind of looking at your structure. In terms of choosing missions, a good starting point is on the Warhammer community page, the chapter approved tournament mission pool. Again, this will change with new packs each year and the possible impending 11th edition that might be coming sometime at some point. So again, these kind of things are useful for looking at missions that players expect to play at tournaments. There are more missions than this in the current mission pack, but exploding ordnance and kind of one of the other crazier ones isn't included. And again, look at other tournaments that have existed, been run, what's been popular, what kind of generally gets run, and that kind of will help you in that regard. We then have BCP. I'm signed in. Once you've created an account, you don't have to do anything special unless you want to create an organisation, which, as you can see here, created that, and then you can list your events as being run by the organisation, or you can run it as a person. It doesn't massively make a difference. You will potentially need to, under My Account, if you click the person picture in the top right, if you are going to take payments via BCP, you will have to add a Stripe setup. It's very easy to do. If you click their link, the default is normally there. I have one from previous times when I used it, so you will need one of those if you are going to go via here. In terms of setting up an event, you click Organise, Create Event. It eventually loads. There we go. If you haven't got an organisation, you will just have self. Otherwise, you can select the organisation. Doesn't make a blind bit of difference. You then need to just select the game system that you are using. There we go. You can then upload an image if you have one. And again, depending on the image, depends on how good the scale is. I have other ones, but for speed, you then need to give the event a name. There you go, call it test. It will then say who's running it. Is it in person or virtual? You can do TTS ones on here. Where is it being held? Obviously, this is the location I have mine. Again, it's just so that for players, if they're searching on BCP, they know whether it's anywhere near them, or if they're going to sign up to an event that expects them to travel to the other side of the world. In the event description, I tend to put a link to my website because I have one. Also, the number of rounds, the what's being played, so the chapter approved mission pack will be used. The terrain format, so WTC terrain. I also put a link in the external URL to the website there, and then put the ticket price as well, and then probably put in the kind of list submission date as well is quite useful. It depends on whether you are putting event information elsewhere or if this is the sole place. I have a link to the Facebook event as well as kind of my website, so I don't put as much information here as others might that don't have those resources. Once you've done that, you can go to the next one. The default is the chapter approved, so the best one to leave it as. It's then a case of how many rounds, and kind of you do get a round timer that you can activate. I don't tend to use it, but I just put that in there so it kind of gives a option. You then need to do singles, doubles or teams. It's recommended you have hide lists when you set up the event, because otherwise all players can see the event. Once the events, once you've got all lists in and you want to reveal them, you kind of come back into game configuration and then unclick this and save, and then players will be able to see each other's lists. I'll kind of show that. Additional game settings, I do rank tables, just because knowing that if you're currently winning the event, you're on the higher tables, and kind of just helps for structural organisation. It's not a requirement, it doesn't matter. Most people liked ranked tables as well. Another thing I tend to hide is placings, particularly so that at the end of the event I can kind of do the well done, congratulations award ceremony without everyone already knowing who won. Once you have all lists in, you need to come back into game configuration, toggle those so that players can't keep changing their lists, especially once you reveal the lists as well. You don't want people to look at what's turning up to the event and suddenly decide they're going to bring something different and tailor their list. So you then have the scoring settings. Generally, you're going to want to just use the default one. If you are using WTC scoring, for example, you would need to change it to this, and then that will allow players to put in their score and it gives them a WTC result, the differential scoring. Generally for pairings, the default is wins and then battle points. I tend to take random and bring it up, and I will do wins random. It stops something that's known as submarining, which is where players will maybe score lower, in theory, to give themselves an easier pairing as the game goes on, and try and kind of get better results placings wise. I do wins battle points, which is the default one. You can do strength of schedule, opponent game win percentage is another one that is the one recommended by GW, because it's then your standing at the end of the event is based on how well the people you've played has performed. So if you get first, you've clearly played harder opponents. The only problem with that is where pairings are random, you could play round one someone that then goes on to lose every single game, and you can't come first because of nothing the player's done. There's nothing you can do because of the randomness. So I kind of avoid it at the moment. There is no good way to do placings. There is always going to be a foible with each style, but you kind of go with what you feel is the best. And again, make sure you communicate pairings process and placings to players so that it's not a surprise at the end of the event or part way through. You then have two choices. If you are taking tickets, sales off of BCP, manually entering roster, and then, or if you're using BCP's online registration, you can allow players to then sign themselves up to the event, even if you're taking payment not on here. I manually enter players myself because I find that useful. Some people and larger scale events will do online registration even though they do payments elsewhere, purely from a logistical side of view. Trying to enter 800 people into an event would be a bit of a headache. Then I open this up and put in how many tickets are for sale. For example, it might be 30 players, 60 players, however many you're doing, and then the price. So the only thing you need to then be aware of is there is a fee, and again, generally you'll put that on yourself, not the player. So it just lets you know what you will get back, which again is worth considering when you're looking at covering costs, what your minimum threshold is to be able to run the event if you are having to hire a space, because if you don't get enough money, it's going to just cost you to run the event at a base rate anyway. Once you've done that, you can then go to the circuits. Once you become an approved TO, which I'll kind of show you next of how to get to, you can get automated tokens, so I can automatically request ones for events for this. If you are, for example, doing in the UK and want to register for the UKTC circuit tokens, that's the word I'm thinking of, sorry. Then kind of if you search for it, they do have the event submission page that you can go to, click that, and then it will guide you through a step-by-step to do that. So there are other ones. You might have local ones for you that you can kind of become part of. Also, as part of this, having the event set up on Facebook is useful because again, it's another way to allow people to know that events exist. It's useful being part of different groups on Facebook. So there's like competitive 40k page, UK tournament dates. It's just another way to share your events. So you can click share and kind of plonk the information on there. Again, here we have that event that I'm running, and here I have a bit more information. It links to the tickets. It's just another kind of way of advertising. So once you have done that, you then create event. I'm not going to, because otherwise it causes me issues with tokens. So once your event's created, it will then appear in your manage events. So here we go. So here's one that I'm running later in the year. So this is what it then looks like once set up. When you want to add a player, so here's secondary one that create for this purpose. An option that if you have got the beta options enabled, you can give players a fixed table. So if for any reason people need to be on an end table or have a separate table that just gives them a bit more accessibility, you can put in whatever table number that is, and it will always put that person on that table. Should you have not put table 1 for 2 people. Once you click register, it then asks you to agree. See, there you go. Can't do that because I've already done it for someone else. So register, boom. So it does give you that as a warning. There we go. So we've then got those 2 people there. Both are shockingly me. And then, as you can see, there's that symbol, or might be able to see because it's underneath my head. There we go. For that person has a specific table. If for any reason someone drops or removes from the event, you can take them out. I always add myself in, just because then I can see it from the point of view of people going to the event, just so I can check whether lists are visible and things like that. So if I undrop the player, there we go. I got 2 people sign up for my event. Once I want to start the event, I'm going to check in all players. There we go. All non-drop players are in. As I said earlier as well, another thing you'll need to have done is gone back into game configuration and made sure that the hide lists is turned off and that list editing is kind of locked in. So once you have then got all the players checked in, you can then go to the pairings one down the side. This can all be done from a phone as well, so that is kind of doable in that sense, running the event from a phone or a tablet. And then once you've got that, you can click Start Tournament. It will pair the players based on the settings you've put in. So there we go. Shockingly, the only 2 players have paired. Once, if for any reason, you need to swap the player or add list, because shockingly neither of these players have thing. So you can either drop the player out because they've come around and said, I'm really sorry, I've got to go home, partner's called me, and whatever reason. And then you can substitute yourself in if you have an odd number, or if you have a ringer, someone that will play to help out, then can kind of swap them in. Or if you need to swap table, if you click on the number, you might need to change table. For example, if the table feature didn't work, and you need to put these players on table 2 because that's the one that gives better accessibility. Clear scores, give both players a loss, whether if they've kind of done something wrong or decided that they've less fun reason basically. But you can also, if they're struggling, put in their scores for them, edit the scores. Once a player enters a score, they cannot edit it. So you can come back in, and if they've accidentally put them the wrong way round, you can put them back in, which it's quite nice that actually when it comes in, it does give you this confirmation, so you can show the players and go, Gemma is the winner, and confirm, and then it will put that result in. Then you can kind of either go to the next round by finalising round. Once it's done that, it will ask you to do next round. You can update the settings. There's nothing you need to do here except for maybe hide placings is useful to do at this point. We're going into round 2 or 3, and then it will start the next round. It might crash because there's only 2 players. Oh no, don't know what's going to. Oh look, shockingly, the only 2 players are playing again. So again, once that round's finished, and it will, if the scores aren't in, it will tell you. So we're just going to do that for speed. There we go. So they are double loss, and then finalise round. And then if, let's say, there is another round, click next round. Otherwise, if you need to end the tournament, you can click end tournament, which you will have to do at the end of round 3 or round 5, however many. It will, as you can see here, because I chose that option, it's hidden the placings. I will, explain who won, who lost, etc. Top 3 generally, maybe undefeated, and then the next one you can do is submit to circuit. I'm not going to click that because it will try and submit to ITC, which will cause me a bit of issue. But you click there, and any circuits you signed up to, you can click on the appropriate token, which is just the little link, and it will add it to the rankings for ITC, UKTC, whichever ones you're part of. And that's kind of it really in terms of setting up an event and doing that. So that's going through the pairings platform. You then have the approved TO program. The main thing before signing up for it, which there is the link here, I'll put in the video description, you need to have run a couple of events because they want to check that you're real. One of the advantages of it is that you do get access to the codex codes for the system that you run if you are playing 40k. So this is for Age of Sigmar and 40k only at the moment, to my knowledge. So it will give you the codex or the battle tomes or whatever they're called for Age of Sigmar and allow you access to those rules. It's really useful from a TO point of view because it means that you have access to the rules. So if a player asks you about a Lord of Change and you don't know what they do, you can pull up the rules easily. And that's the only other thing really that's kind of useful there. It doesn't provide you much else currently other than they do a few bits of information around changes to tournaments they might be doing, feedback. It doesn't give you any insight into what's coming next. Like, you don't find out about new rules, new armies or anything like that. They don't get you to sign an NDA or anything, so don't have to worry about any of that kind of thing. But it is useful in that regard. There are a few events around the world where they do have a kind of tournament organizer effectively meet ups with Games Workshop in attendance. The Warhammer Opens, I think, tend to have them in the US, and there was at LGT in the UK, there was this year, so they are expanding that, so it is useful to meet other TOs. And again, it's worth looking and keeping an eye out for other TOs in your community, just as people that you can talk to, because generally all the TOs are great. There's a few different ones and chats that I'm in locally, nationally, just to kind of spin ideas, check things in, sometimes even querying rule things, just to kind of get it right in your head, or things that have come up, so like weird rules, interactions, just so kind of useful to do. Another thing I would recommend is setting up a dedicated email, purely because that will mean that you don't have to use your personal email, which means you can kind of keep that separate, whether that is a kind of your own domain or whether that is just a Gmail account or whatever you want to use. Not massively kind of matters, but just gives you a degree of separation from normal life. If you do have any questions, if there is anything kind of you need support with, feel free to reach out either via Facebook, via Instagram, via email from my website, and kind of I'll help you as best I can, because it's really great to kind of build the event community even more. And I hope this was useful, and goodbye.